Welcome to Psych Your Way to Success. I am Claire.
And I'm Heather.
And today, as we wrap up the year at the end of 2023, we want to talk about gratitude in the workplace, gratitude, in life and the upcoming year. And this is one of my favorite topics. I'm really excited to be able to have this conversation with you. What does it mean to you, Heather, like when it comes to gratitude? I know we briefly obviously spoke before the recording, but what's probably your biggest thing when you hear that?
When I think of gratitude, I always think it affects your attitude. So the amount of gratitude you have seems to be related to your attitude towards anything.
Yeah. Negatively correlated.
Right?
There's a correlation, right?
There is a correlation. And I think any situation, there is positive and negative to it. Mm-hmm. And you can choose to focus on one or the other. When I say that you need to have gratitude, it doesn't mean you ignore the bad.
Oh, yeah.
It means you acknowledge that, but you choose to focus on the positive. And I think that's where people are. That's where I don't even think people, but I definitely used to get caught up in the fact that if I'm grateful for the situation, it means I'm not recognizing the negative impact it has. But that's not it. It's about actually acknowledging that, okay, I'm in a tough situation right now.
Put lightly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And okay, well, what can be good about this hard situation I'm in? And then it's it's not ignoring the fact of what's happening around you. It's choosing to focus on something different.
You said it, and all that popped in my head right there was being grateful does not give excuses to the poor behavior, right? I think that's the biggest thing we need to remember is just because we're grateful for something, I can be grateful that I don't have a certain X in my life, right? But it doesn't excuse their behavior toward me or mine toward them that was poor, right? And I'm certain in every one of them, it goes both ways. So don't forget that it may provide grace, but it provides you with the ability to forgive, whether it's yourself, whether it's them. It gives you it allows you to process and move forward, right? I have so many things when it comes to gratefulness. And there's even, so much research on the positive correlation between those that are grateful and those that live happy, healthy lives, right? There's just this trajectory in your own life that you can create just this wonderful, wonderful future for yourself. But we also have the ability to talk about, for me, and Heather, I know that I'm not going to make you do this. Obviously, I can't, but what I am excited, and I would challenge anybody else for the upcoming year, because we're getting into 2024. Every week, somebody told me about this, and I can't remember who, but thank you if you are listening. Every week, you write down the thing that you're grateful for, whether it's you're doing it for work purposes so that you can shift that mindset that you have at work, but you can shift your mindset in your whole life too. And I have a jar set up for the upcoming year of every week I write down the thing that I'm grateful for that week. If it happens early on in the week, I'm going to write it down and put it in there, right? At the end of the year, you have every week. We have every week written down something great that you're grateful for. And at the new year, you get to spend this time next year opening them up and reading. We remember the bad so well, but this is a moment to remember even the small little things that happened in your year that you were pretty darn grateful for at some point. And just have a glass of wine or, a root beer float, whatever it is that you like. And you get to spend that time reading through it. And maybe that job that you thought you hated, maybe you don't hate it so much. You know what I mean? Maybe that, relationship with your fur baby or your partner isn't as, maybe you can start looking at the right things. Or I shouldn't say right things. Maybe you look at it from a different angle that you didn't get a look at it from before. Now that I'm done dominating, please feed into that however you would like.
I mean, I just love this. I remember at a time when my family wasn't doing well, we started doing a gratitude journal every night.
Sure.
And I would make everybody say what they were grateful for that day. And I wrote it down. And I'll tell you, it was really fun. Like some days it's like, it was funny, you know, because it's like, it's hard to be grateful some days. Like, I'm going to be honest. Like,
no
like it's
for me.
Right? It's like, sometimes you're like, I'm grateful I can smile. You know, it's like, which is actually like kind of a big deal if you think about it. You know what I mean? That my face allows me to smile, that all the muscles work. And like, just even the act of smiling is kind of big. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, that is actually not a bad thing, you know? Or just
great.
like, I can get up out of bed. Like, I think sometimes we take some of these things that are so mundane that we just take for granted, and how important they actually are. Like when we feel healthy, that's such a big deal.
It's amazing.
And
we don't realize it or appreciate it until we don't feel healthy, right?
Exactly. And so even on those days where you're saying things that are a little bit mundane, like, I'm glad I can open my eyes, you know, and you're kind of saying it sarcastically, or I guess I'm saying it like in my mind, I'm like, and then you really think about how amazing that is, that like I get to open my eyes and I get to see all the beautiful colors, and I get to see my kids' faces, and I get to see what I look like in the mirror. Like all of those things is so magical. And for someone who doesn't get to see, like you think about that perspective, and it really does like be like, oh, wow. And I think that's the important part of this gratitude idea that you have, is that, you know, sometimes we don't realize like what amazing things are happening in our lives, and we just overlook them and focus more on the negative. So I love this idea.
Well, and think about social media and the news and everything that we're having to deal with. Like, and I will say that you and I have a friend who is in a war zone, literally a war zone, who is even now still finding ways to be grateful. And it is amazing to see that level. And I don't think that we in our nation often do this, right? It's a way and the reason we've come up with, you know, nicknames like Karen, because we're going throughout life just ready to be angry instead of looking at it like I'm ready to be grateful for a lesson I'm about to learn. You know, I love Ted Lasso. I don't know about you. The show Ted Lasso is maybe my hands down one of my favorites. And he said something, and I paused it because I'm rewatching, shocking again. And he said something in the middle of an argument that he is having with one of his other coaches. And the coach is very upset with him. He's screaming at him and he's about to walk out. And Ted says, you know, what is it that I'm missing here? What is it that I have to learn in this conversation? And he means it, right? Like, he's not saying it condescendingly. He's saying, I'm missing something. I have something to learn because you're upset and I don't know why. What do I have to learn from this? Instead of being defensive, right? Like, instead of firing back and being that person that he could be, right? He had every right. It would have been valid for many of us to understand had he done that. But his response was brilliant. And that mindset is the idea of the whole grateful, I think, task is to shift your mindset into gratefulness. You don't have to, you know, I don't know. I just love it. I just love that moment. I love that learning aspect, that learning mindset, and that grateful mindset.
I agree. There's so much to learn from gratitude that, and it really does change your perspective on whatever's happening. Yeah,
I mean,
like
you could be in Costco and get hit by a cart, right? Like I said last time, and you want to fire back at somebody.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how often I think about our friend who's in a war zone right now when I'm getting frustrated with things that are happening.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm just like, and I just sit there and like, I'm getting frustrated. I'm like, oh, this is so difficult.
Mhm.
I don't know why that's so like, it's, and then I'm thinking like, wait a minute. If this is my worst problem today, I'm doing pretty good, you know?
Mhm.
And I know it's not a comparative thing, but sometimes to get yourself out of a situation, you do need to think about like, you know, I have this friend who's like, yeah, trudging through, doing service, being positive,
Mhm.
still connecting with me. Do you know what I mean?
I know.
Like I'm just sometimes it kind of blows my mind. And
Yeah.
that's all because of a positive, grateful attitude, you know? And it's been shown that people with positive, grateful attitude end up, you know, living longer, or they don't, stress doesn't have such a big impact on them. There's like so
Right.
many things to that.
The
And so,
resilience is much higher, right? They have the ability to endure um hardships in a better way, I guess is the best way of putting it. Again, like if you haven't already, you know, anybody listening who hasn't already seen it, Academy Award winning Ted Lasso show, totally worth, like, just the epitome of gratitude when it comes to, you know, I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to do the things. Now, I say all this and I want to be very clear. You don't do it in situations that allow abuse to occur, right? This does Saying that you should be grateful doesn't mean that you stay in abusive situations, right? Like, again, I don't want to say just suck it all up. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying, you know, you can have that tragic moment. You can experience even abuse and walk away from it and say, I'm grateful for the lesson I learned, right? Like, and it takes time to get there. That's not something that we typically say right away. And I don't even encourage that right away. Kind of embrace, my old coworker would always say it, embrace the suck. You know, you're going to sit in something very uncomfortable for a minute with the feelings of loss or pain or upset, anger. I mean, they're all related. So
they are all related, and I couldn't agree. Sometimes having gratitude is walking away. That
yes.
you're grateful you can walk away from a bad situation.
I'm grateful I
It's
love
not
myself enough to walk away.
exactly. And
Mhm.
I think that's such a important point. Gratitude is not ignoring the
No,
situation.
that's a great point.
Gratitude is being aware of the situation.
Yes. I'm over here celebrating. I know so many people
Oh,
can't
I
see me,
love
but I'm like,
it.
yes, high-fiving you from here. Like,
Oh my God, you're
I
so
mean,
cute.
that was so brilliantly said. Yeah. No, it
Yeah,
doesn't mean
because
ignoring.
exactly, like you can say like, I love how you said it. I love myself enough to walk away, because sometimes that's what you need to do. And
Mhm.
and I think that's what's important, is understanding when it is that time, or if you can fix the situation, or, you know, but
Mhm.
ignoring it isn't what we're talking about here.
Right. Oh gosh, no kidding, right? Holy cow.
Yeah. But having a positive outlook on things is important, you know? And I think some days that's what gets you through it. You know, I definitely know that in some situations I've been that have been really terrible, that there's always like a positive, you know, and finding it. Like like, I don't know if you ever heard this, but Mr. Rogers, if you
Oh,
are familiar with him.
I
eh,
have seen him on TV. Yes. I
yes.
was like, we
eh,
know each other.
Yeah, right? And
R.I.P. though. Yep.
he would always say in the bad times, find the helpers, you know?
Oh, that's
And
right.
yeah, he said there's always helpers out there, and if you focus on that, that it makes it much better and helps. And I remember always thinking that as a child, like, find the helpers. And I even took it to that next level because I always think there's something funny in every situation. And sometimes when situations are so heavy and hard that I'm always like, okay, find the funny first so you can kind of laugh about it and take away the pain of that situation for just a second, not ignore it and not like overlook how traumatizing it is. But if you can find the funny, it takes away some of that hard emotion and allows you to deal with what's actually happening instead of being so distraught and having the weight of what's happening around you. And so I always think, I'll say those two things are important, like either find the helpers because they're there. The Red Cross is always there, or like whoever we think is our helpers. And, find the funny. There's always something funny in a situation to laugh at.
Yeah. Oh my God. That is so relatable. Both of those. I mean, levity in a situation that otherwise doesn't seem to have it organically it's attainable. And you can, I unfortunately think that I find it all the time. Not other people find all of the things funny that I find funny, but I'm laughing. So, I mean, it's usually out there for us to find.
It is. And I mean, with all of these things, there has to be a little bit of acknowledgement of they're not to avoid the situation because I used to laugh at situations to avoid them. So
what?
That's not healthy either. I'm just saying now I've learned that finding the funny is actually a really good tool to not make the situation so heavy and then to find the funny and acknowledge it and then deal with the situation is how I tend to handle situations better. So I'll find something funny in whatever I'm doing, even though technically it's not a funny situation. Then I can handle what actually is happening. So
sure. Well, and it creates a space so that you can handle
it.
I love that. I think even more than that, I love that you brought back Mr. Rogers. Okay, first. Just take 2 seconds to acknowledge that. I love that. I love that and I totally forgot that he brought it up, but finding those helpers, and it is so true. And I've been on both sides of the coin. It's so incredibly relatable where I didn't find the helpers. And in retrospect, I was like, oh man. And then I've also been the helper that I'm like, it's right here. Like, we're right here. We're trying to help you. Please, if you just got out of your own way, and I am the queen of getting in my own way. Please let me tell you stories, but that's a totally different podcast. But it's like, oh my gosh. Yes. Find the helpers. That is such a great one. I love that. So excellent. So when it comes to gratitude, as we're wrapping this up, what would you say, since we're at the end of the year and we're trying to figure out what we're coming up in the new year, what would you say is your most favorite moment of gratitude this year?
Honestly,
I'm throwing this at you.
No. And I appreciate it because I actually have something in the top of my mind that I've been thinking of the last few weeks. I am so grateful with the time I've had with my children and that I've actually stopped to be present with them. Last night I had the most magical night with my son. He's 10 and we went to a hockey game. I'm a big sports fan, so I love going to sports.
Me too. Love hockey.
And he's a big sports fan. And we just sat there and we cheered and we had the best time. We talked about the game the whole time. We didn't we were talking about the players and what was happening and like how exciting it was. And, he looked at me at the night and he was like, Mom, what I love about you is you don't care what people think. You're going to cheer and you're just going to be excited. And we're just going to sit here, just me and you here in this moment, And I just thought that was the biggest compliment. And later that night, he told me how that was his favorite night with me. And I'm so glad that I just took that time to not be on my phone and
be totally present.
And just focusing on the game and having fun with him, not trying to talk to him about things that he needs to work on. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Don't make it into something that's not. Yeah.
exactly. So that's what I'm most grateful for, is that I have been really trying hard to take the time to be present with my children when they're around.
Well, really glad that you led. Jeez, man. Oh man. So I mean, I guess for mine, I'm honestly, I'm going to be completely transparent. There's so many things. There's school that I'm grateful for. There's all of the people such as yourself that I've met through Harvard and met through, this quest of getting our master's degree. But I mean, I know it's super silly. I'm obviously grateful for my fur babies because it's me. But I'm gonna have to go the kid route again. I had a similar moment. It wasn't at a hockey game, but my son is 24, so he only child. We are having this opportunity to kind of reconnect and get to know each other on just a human level, rather than me being parent and telling him all the things that I think are not happening that need to change, or the things that we parents do. In order to, because we love them and we want them to be successful, and we're trying to, in my way, the wrong way, typically half the time, urge them in a certain direction, or, whatever. Instead, we're having no serious conversations, nothing that's going to trigger either one of us. And we met recently for ice cream and lunch. I know that sounds funny because he had ice cream, I had lunch. That's why I say it that way.
I love
we had
it.
ice cream and a lunch, and I got one of those boxes of questions that you pull out and you ask questions. I learned so much more about my son in that hour time than I think I have over a handful of years of trying to be his parent. And it was amazing. And it is so fun to rebuild a different level, maybe even a different foundation of our relationship together. So I cannot be more grateful for the fights that led up to us having to do this. So
I love that. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's such a great idea too. I'm going to copy it.
Do it. It's so worth it. Like, if you have the opportunity, it's a fun little activity. And now it sits on our counter, on my coffee table. So like, if even a friend comes over and we can pull it out and just be like, oh, what's this question? And learn something new. Anyway, so wrapping it up, it is the end of our session again. It feels like that went by so quick again, every time. So, yeah, as always, any last words, Heather?
Say, as Mr. Rogers would say, find the helpers.
And we'll end on that one. Go ahead. Have a beautiful rest of your year. Spend your time with the people that mean so much to you, and, get excited about the upcoming year. All right. We will see you in 2024. Have a good rest of your year. Thanks again, guys.
Peace out.